Good evening and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may know me from Sound Image Productions. I also have a couple closed roadie groups, one called Death by Loadout, another one called The Backstage Pass. Thank you for bearing with us this evening. We are a hot shop. That means we are working right up until the showtime, and we kind of had a couple minor technical challenges, and my crew is working with it, and so we've come to you a little bit late, so thank you for bearing with me.
I told the audience you didn't get your brown M&Ms.
There was, I specifically said I only want a bowl full of brown M&Ms. You guys could have all the rest. Kind of going against the Van Halen tradition, and nothing. No M&Ms. I looked everywhere.
I know.
I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to do this cold. M&M list.
Well, I'm feeling slighted, actually.
But this is kind of a special edition, kids. We've got a lovely round table of hot shots in the house this evening. We got an amazing guest. Bear with us for this extraordinary front of house talent. With me this evening is the lovely and talented Kyle Thomas. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Vinny.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and truly a legendary front of house engineer, and really all around badass for us. He kind of does it all, and I don't even know how to explain your history. Let's put it this way: 7 pages of the friggin'. I think you've worked with 60% of every artist on the planet, and it's the one and only Winston Thomas. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
It's great
Thanks,
to have
Vince.
you. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you being here. Let me do something up front. We get interesting guests. I've gotten samurai swords from Japan, guitars, drums, weird shit. We have a ton of stuff that our friends send us for the show, and it's very kind and very sweet. This lovely lady, Kimberly Romero, sent us this cool little card.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, and Dave Kroll on the front, because she knows the relation. And then one of these Jack Rack Marshall little 1/4-inch key displays. It's very clever and very cute. We'll throw this in the office and put our extra cage keys, the special place where we keep all the good microphones at. We'll put those on there for you. Thank you, Kimberly. It was very sweet. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing great, man. We just wanted to say thanks to Ben Davis for last week's show.
Well, it was lovely having Ben. We're very audio heavy, pretty much all of us. The whole crew here are all audio people for the most part, even though we work in a production house, so our hands get into other things, but we're really audio guys. I mean, let's just face it, that's a fact. And so it was nice to have Ben in here. We smacked him around a little bit. We gave him the, what's up with the whole moth thing, and it was gentle love, and he did a great job. He's a soldier, and so thank you, Ben, for being on here.
We got to be nice to our moths, we got to give a shout out to Kyle Laser and Alan Pettibone.
Yep.
Yes, this evening they were really. We would have again. This is a hot shop, so my set gets torn down and sent out to work. These things are. It's not my toys. Well, some of them are, but a lot of this is sound image stuff, and we make sure if we can rent it, it goes out, and we make do. So in the last minute, we came up with some lighting solutions, and that's our fresh back from Incubus tour, just out of Red Rocks. Alan Pettibone, our lighting guy, just came in and tightened us up really good. And the amazing and talented Kyle Laser, again, another lighting guy, very talented man, helped out with that. So thank you, gentlemen. We couldn't do it without you.
Absolutely. And I was out at the Paramount today doing a little site survey, getting ready for a show next week. Transitioned over to the Warfield and brought an S6L engine today over to Pussifer.
Yeah, the good old Pussifer, good old Tool offshoot. Have you heard Pussifer, Winston?
No. Well, I've heard of him.
Yeah, it's basically one of Maynard's bands. He's got Tool, he's got Perfect Circle, and he's got Pussifer, and they're all Tool and Perfect Circle have a very similar thing going on. Very,
Wow.
Progressive type rock. But Pussifer is kind of a freestanding own thing. It's a little experimental, at least in my way of hearing it.
Oh, totally.
And it's a very special thing. But they're playing the legendary. I mean, if you can't play any place in Northern California, go to the Warfield. That place has got a wicked, crazy history, and it's just a great, great venue. And luckily, our good friend Kyle went and sorted out some issues for them so they could perform this evening.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah,
and we also saw Greg Price today. He was in the middle of developing a new Meyer rig, I believe.
Yeah, he's. I don't think I'll get in trouble for saying this. So, of course, Metallica is a band that never sleeps, and they put the most asses in seats. Our dear, dear good friend Greg Price is their front of house guy. His office is right over there. He was just in this day. He straight off of some work he had done for them in New York and Los Angeles, very, very large shows. And they are now contemplating their next go-around, which will involve a new rig, a new configuration. Which is what he's working through with Myers. And they're going to come out and they're going to tour their first 2 albums, which for me is that might even make me go see the show because I enjoy those albums very much. So that should be really interesting. And of course, they're a very different sound than the modern Metallica. So that will be a challenge for Greg, who being one of the best engineers on the planet and probably the best stadium engineer on the planet, without hyperbole. I think we could easily agree on that. We'll make that an extraordinary event. And they'll probably bring 200 boxes to it, so it'll be something to see. And and so we got to hang out with him today doing that in between all the crazy that is Sound Image pushing our own shows out doing everything.
Speaking of special guys,
Yeah.
our papa, the owner of Sound Image, Dave Shadone, it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Dave.
That's
Yes,
right.
happy birthday.
Yes, Big Daddy Dave Shadone is years old today. And he is Big Daddy. He's the reason for it all happening, and just mad respect and total love to that man.
Yeah, much appreciated.
It couldn't be us without him. And he's the guy that went through 50 years ago and took out the machete and started carving a path that led to the way most of us, regardless of the name of your business, gets it done today. And he is truly a pioneer. He took a lot of the arrows, and like I said, we wouldn't be us without him. So happy birthday, Dave.
Happy birthday, man.
Happy
We love you,
birthday.
Dave.
I'm also getting ready for a gig with Scott Perlman next week. I'm looking forward to.
Really?
Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah, I know Scott.
Yeah, and let me send a side note out to him. He knows this is one of my favorite people on the planet. Now, I'm a little free and fast with the compliments, but this is a special cat, and I love him with all my heart. And Scott, I know you had recently had some challenges. He had a couple of his animals time out.
Oh, wow.
And he loves his animals, and that is, anybody who's had that experience knows that can be just heart crushing, and he felt it acutely. And so just all my love to you, Scott, and of course your lovely wife and family. I'm sorry that that's going down, and we're here for you, baby. I know that you've had a lot of us reach out to you and show you the love, but just know, man, if you need us for anything, you want to talk at 2 a.m, which he is known for doing, I'm a phone call away, baby.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you, brother, and good for you getting to work with Scotty because he's just a kick.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it.
he's good to work with.
Yeah, he's a great man and extremely talented, and let alone his abilities on a board. But if you're on a job with him, you're also your production's gonna run right. He's a little bit the Mussolini. He'll make the trains run on time. It's just if you guys get that, you'll get that reference. You might not.
I do.
A little bit of an older history reference there.
Yeah.
But if you get the reference, understand that Scott's a guy that gets things done. He understands this game. He's been doing it for a long time, and he is one of the best. So you'll have a great time.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say me and Mike had a lot of fun at Aftershock. Our gig with Nima Fila went great, and I definitely had a good time out with Mike trying to take over the world a little bit.
Well, Mike's a badass. Mike's, the octopus. That's what that's there for. Of course, that's Devopus. That's a little bit of our Devo friends.
Yeah.
And our octopus for Mike and my dear brother, George Edwards, general manager, gave us that as a treat to kind of honor Mikey. I'm curious how the audience respond. This is a Japanese girls band that shreds balls. I mean, they're really like a trip and really good. How did the audience respond? They get it?
Yeah, I think the first U.S. debut was definitely solid.
Yeah,
Really
I can imagine that. They really bring the heat. I mean, I know they're singing in Japanese. It's a little bit of a language thing there, but I think musically, the first time I heard them, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's well done.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun, man.
Good.
I got to see Sarah Elliott. Been a minute, and Brian Adorama. It was nice to run into both of them.
Altamira, Mr. Altamira, if you're watching, and I know you're not, I just moved Michael Fronte's cases that you've left here forever. I've just pushed them out of my way because they've been up my ass for too long. So when you'd like to come and get them, you feel free to do that because I got love for you, Mr. Altamira.
That's very nice of you. Come out like that.
I love me some Michael Fronte. Well, this is his crew we're talking about, and Brian is a dear friend, and I'd love for him to come in and catch up.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting on some of his gear, and that'd be really nice. And you say who else was there?
Sarah Elliott.
Sarah Elliott from Adamson Systems Engineering.
You got it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Now that is one of the boutique companies that brings the heat. When I talk about some really special line array and PA,
Love me some E-Series.
I'm a big fan of the E-Series, and Adamson. Sarah is an extraordinarily talented. Of course, we know her previously from View Audio Technica. An extraordinary woman, lovely human being, and I would love. She wasn't here not that long ago, but I would love to catch up with her again sometime very soon.
She sends her love to you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
That's it, Bubba. That was the week.
Well, that sounds like for you, like you've had a pretty complete and big week, buddy.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming in this evening. Winston, what's new with you, baby?
Well, been doing the usual around here, repairing stuff and prepping systems, getting ready for shows.
Well, we go to you on that, Win, is because, as you know, doing the fine, delicate work, getting a Socko online, dealing with RJ45.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't have the patience and the wherewithal, the tenacity and patience, which is an interesting combination of traits.
Yeah, it was kind of like a really twisted kind of detail-oriented sort of mindset you have to have with some of that,
Yeah, and some of these weekends we come back after however many shows are out there doing their thing, and we got a couple 100,000 pounds of gear out there, and it's not uncommon for a W1 to come back wrong, or something going on with some amplifiers, whatever. You've worked on pretty much everything that's come through here.
Yes.
And although we use you in other capacities frequently, that one is the sweet spot, and we really appreciate that you handle that for us, because we'd be in big trouble without you.
Glad to be able to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much, buddy. What else is new with you, buddy?
Well, I'm going to head out, actually, leave the shop for a few days next week. I'm going to head out to Colorado and work with the Pointer Sisters for a few days out in Denver, actually.
Oh, that should be a good fly date.
Yeah.
Very fun. I know that you've been working with them for quite some time, yeah?
Yeah, quite a few years now, yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Great band. I mean, the sisters are the real deal. They bring it.
They actually do.
Yeah, no, I know it. I'm not just saying that. No, that's I'm sure a really good show, and I'm sure with you at the front of the desk that it sounds good as well.
I'd like to think so.
It definitely sounds good, I'm sure, if this man's mixing it.
Well, no, I think that just goes without saying. What else is going on in your life, man? Everything good up at the house? Mama good?
Yeah. No fires. We're not evacuated for a change.
People that live in the woods, it can be a problem, right?
Absolutely.
I think was it last year we both got at least threatened to be evicted?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, we got evacuated, just was a few weeks ago or a month ago when one fire came through that was, it was pretty close, actually. It came within about a mile of the house this time. Yeah.
And that's really sketchy. I know when we saw it last year for us down in the Monterey Bay area.
Right.
It came just on the opposite. We're in the valley. We're on this side of the valley, and it was on that side of the valley. And I don't know what the actual distance was. I don't want to fib. It was probably a couple miles, but it was close enough in the smell and the
Oh yeah.
and the flames
You get the
and
smoke and all that.
That was close enough for us. When you live on 5 acres and you got trees everywhere. And by the way, a little quick shout out. I love you, honey. I have the best girl in the world, Jackie Canterbury. I'm in love. But yeah, and she's down there holding down that fort right now.
Right.
And I'm up here in the Bay Area, and
yeah, it's kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just. California has just gotten strange that way. It's either we're running from fire or we're running from mudslides. And the mudslides are getting less and less because we don't get any rain.
Yeah, well, in fact, we're looking at that again this winter, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a real thing. I'm not sure where to land on that. I guess it's just it's the nature of how things are going in life and on the planet right now. And I've never been one of those deniers of anything, but I think it's happened a lot faster than I had imagined because we're seeing it really strong and regular.
When you're out in the country like we are, you really do see it. Living in the city, you don't notice. I mean, you hear about stuff and people say, yeah, this is happening or this isn't happening, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're actually out there like you are, like I am, you do see what reality actually is.
That's right.
And when there's no snowpack on those mountains, there's no snowpack.
Yeah, then that's only a couple things left. That's a dry water. There's less water for us all to drink and
everything.
Grow our crops with.
Yeah.
And of course, the likelihood of fire risks go right through the roof, and it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just a part of our lives now. Listen, I'm really glad both of you are here. You're going to help me do this thing, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking forward to talking to Michelle here.
Yeah.
But she's got a pretty interesting story to tell.
Absolutely, 100%. We don't get schlocky guests in here. We're very lucky, and this is a great example of that. Let me get right to it. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys back there. And I'm still not in the big screen, and that's fine. I only glance over there anyways. I just stay out of all that.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's no good for me at all.
Just imagine yourself being there, okay?
I'm not sure it would help. Regardless, let me get right to it. First of all, my guest this evening has been extraordinarily kind and patient dealing with our nonsense, and we're 32 minutes into the hour, and we still haven't gotten to talk, so let me get right to it. We have an extraordinary, really talented person with us this evening. He's a full-time terrain front of house engineer since 1992. He's had the pleasure of working some of the really extraordinary bands. I'm going to name the ones I like. Elvis Costello, Janet Jackson, Mr. Big, STYX. I want to talk about Fastball, named after a porno. General Public, a great band. Started with Fuel. Love those guys. I mean, this is the kind of... so often we don't get to mix who we like. It seems like she's really, woven that.
Yeah.
This amazing, talented human being is here with us this evening. Her name is Michelle Sabolchick. Now, hi, Michelle. How are you, dear?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm too hot. The lights, and I'm just fine. I'm very excited to have you on. Can you help us out? I noticed that in some of the communications we've had back and forth that we might not have given you the proper name credit. Are we doing that wrong?
It was Michelle Sabolchick Petnato. It's now Michelle Sabolchick.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you had been crediting.
Okay, so we're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for being here with us this evening. We appreciate your kind patience. We usually bookend this thing by starting out asking a couple kind of formulaic generic questions on either end, and we roam around in the middle. I wanted to ask you how you got your start in the business.
So I in high school, when you're having to make that big decision of what do you want to be when you grow up, I decided I wanted to be a recording engineer. I always had a passion for music, but I didn't want to be a performer. So I kind of figured out that, well, if I can make records, I can still be part of the whole process, but not have to be on stage. And long story short, went to two different technical schools for audio engineering. While I was at the second one, I discovered live sound, which, I'd been to a bunch of concerts like every teenager, but I never thought that was actually a job. And once I had my live sound course, I immediately switched gears and realized if I can get paid to mix music and travel the world, it's like the best job in the world.
Yeah.
So I immediately started working at a local sound company, mixing local bands, frat parties and, speakers and talking heads kind of stuff. And then I moved around a lot just to keep working. I worked at a couple nightclubs in Florida. I worked as a stagehand. I worked in an AV department at an entertainment complex. I just did every job I could do that had anything to do with audio. Like I did some assisting in studios, and I just kept working and learning. And it was a couple of years later, I got offered my first tour. And the weird part about it was even though I love the whole mixing thing, I wanted to go on tour as a keyboard tech because I played piano. And I kind of was like, I don't think I want the responsibility of mixing the band. And I just wanted to tech keyboards. And then I got offered a mixing gig and fell in love with it and never looked back.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable approach. I love that you skipped over the nonsense. Him, myself, pretty much all my friends thought we could do the rock star thing first and then fell back. You were smart enough to just I've always equated that to gold, people that mine for gold. You can have success or not, but if you sold the people the pans and the shovels, they tend to do really well. That seems to be the better approach. So it seems like you did that very smartly. Let me ask you about your out. Currently, I believe I'm correct about that, with the Ghost Towns currently out front house. Can you tell me?
Yeah.
I am not familiar with this band, and I didn't have enough time to check into it. Talk to me about what's going on with the Ghost Towns. Who are they? What's their sound like? What do they do?
So Ghost Hounds is a blues rock band based in Pittsburgh. It's basically a passion project of an entrepreneur named Thomas Tull. And we've spent the summer opening for Garth Brooks and the Rolling Stones in Europe and doing a couple of festivals. And I started with them in May, and right now they're recording a new record, so we're on a bit of a break. But it's a great band, great group of people, lots of fun, and it's been a blast.
Well, sounds very cool. It's something I got to dig into. I apologize not being able to have the time to do that yet because I usually do. But so you recommend that I check them out?
Sure, yeah.
All right, I'm going to get into it.
Like blues rock, it's a good band.
Yeah, big fan, and it's the time thing, but I will check that out. I'm glad you're doing that. Let's go back a little bit and back to you mentioned, or I mentioned that you started this in '92, kind of got your feet into the fire. Was this with the Spin Doctors?
Yeah, so the Spin Doctors was my first tour, and it actually came from a friend of mine, a classmate that I became friends with at school. He knew I wanted to get on the road, and it was a few years after we had graduated. He was mixing them, and he was looking to get off the road and offered me the gig, and I'd never heard of them, and said, but I was, like, whoever it is, I don't care. I want to be on tour. And I started the tour, and within a month, like, their album just exploded. It started, flying up the Billboard charts, and it was just the perfect place at the perfect time. And I got to ride that wave, so it was really fun, really exciting.
Yeah, you kind of came in and just boom, because I was checking the dates on that, and I'm familiar with their work, and you're not wrong. That really kind of went kind of stratospheric. It was a really big thing for them, and so that had to be a lot of fun. What is your general philosophy on mixing? I mean, are you the kind of person that gets your foot on the gas and go big, or you like it nice and warm and clean, but at volume? What's your approach?
So I'm very organic. For me, it's more about the feel, and I am, if anybody who knows me, it's like I went into digital audio kicking and screaming. I'm a big analog lover and still love analog, even though I barely ever get to use it anymore.
Yeah.
But I like to mix with both hands. I hate plugins. I don't use plugins unless I absolutely have to. But I'm more about use a desk that sounds good, so I don't have to spend thousands of dollars on plugins to get there. But I'm all about, like, the feel of the music, and I like to create that. Not balls to the walls loud, but you want to feel like you're at a show. You want, if you wanted to listen to a CD, you would have stayed home. So I want that, I go for that sound that's kind of like all encompassing, not painful, but you really feel the energy, and it gets the audience moving, because that's why we're at a live event, not sitting home listening to a CD or MP these days.
So do you have a little, Toby Francis is out currently right now. Is he on a X4? And Toby Francis is out with Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he has brought out the whole, I mean, have you seen his outboard gear? It is.
PM5,
yeah, he's out there killing it, and he's Toby Francis. But to stare at his outboard it's just a thing of beauty, and the whole use of real estate, the way he rolls is. I'm with you big on the whole analog versus digital game. Maybe it's our age or something. I know you're a young lady, but I'm an old man, and that's been a hard crossover there. What's your favorite board to mix on?
Analog, my favorite was always the ATI Paragon.
Good board.
And then the X4 when the Paragon just finally stopped working.
Right.
It was a daily thing with that of, fixing it, but it just, nothing sounded like it. I mean, it was an amazing sounding desk.
Yeah.
It had onboard gates and compressors on every channel, which was unheard of at the time.
Yes.
I mean, it's funny because during the pandemic, I was, with all the time off, I was listening to old show tape, like old board mixes that I had on cassettes and CDs, and I was burning them into my laptop. And I'm listening to some of these mixes that came off of that, just a left, right off the board, and it just so fat and warm. And you just can't. You can get that with some digital, but it takes an awful lot of work to get that same depth.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think pretty much, Winston's over here shaking his head in the affirmative.
Well, when I first met Michelle. She was on a Midas Pro X, Pro 10, whatever Pro X, yeah. Funny story on that. I actually held up her load-in that particular day.
Did you think it was funny, Michelle, when he was holding up your load-in?
She probably doesn't even remember it.
Slightly trick question, but okay.
So,
You were saying,
now,
I'm sorry.
I don't know, Michelle, if you remember, we were down in Ventura. There's a big dirt arena there at the fairgrounds. It's
Yes,
right,
yes.
literally almost right on the beach. And what they hadn't figured out or counted on, so I got to backtrack just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go the year before you were there. They made us bury all the cables in this ditch. And seemed like a good idea at the time until this included feeder cable and everything.
No, we've had to bury it. That's not actually a crazy thing.
No, it's quite common.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what they hadn't counted on was after they buried the cables, they determined that they wanted to cover this ditch with this piece of carpet, kind of runner strip stuff. And they put a stagehand or two on it to drive spikes into the ground to hold this carpet down so people wouldn't trip on it and stuff.
Brilliant. Absolutely genius.
Yeah, until...
That was sarcasm. Go ahead.
I could tell, these are long spikes, okay?
Yeah.
So this is why I had to hold up your load in the year after. So he's pounding on all these stakes, not realizing he's driving these spikes through the 4-aught feeder cable. That's the power for front of house and lights.
Oh, boy.
Through that feeder cable right into my 56-core multi-core snake.
Well, that is a really expensive bit of stupidity.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Just the chunk of wire alone was like over $3,000 just for to replace the wire. You know.
Unbelievable.
But here's the other thing. So it put all this power into my snake cable through that spike,
Jesus
right?
Christ.
Which was patched into my PM5D at the time out at front of house. Fortunately,
I don't mean to laugh, man.
well, what it did was wiped out over half of the mic pre's on the console because it shot like 120 or 240 volts, whatever it was, right into the inputs of all those channels through the snake.
God.
Yeah, fortunately, the other end wasn't hooked up to the split, otherwise it would have wasted all the transformers in the split.
Wow.
You know, and fortunately, the monitor console wasn't hooked up either, so.
That sounds like a bad day in Ventura, buddy.
Well, it gets worse. We didn't know that happened.
So you were like, all just, what the hell's going on here?
Well, we didn't have an opening act, you know, that particular day. It was, you know, so-and-so, whoever it was. And so we didn't know that the console was blown, the snake was blown. So it was like the next day when we did have an opening act and we had to mix them. It's like, what's going on here? You know, it's like none of it's working. The boards, you know, it's like, you know, so I called up to the stage, to the monitor guy. It's like, hey, are you getting any of these channels? Because I'm not getting anything out here. And that's when we found out all the damage. And then, of course, we had to figure out how we're going to come up with another board to mix the opening act, as well as getting all those channels from the stage out to that board.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And then you said, oh, hi, I'm Winston. Hi, Michelle.
No, so, okay.
Everything
so now,
was, yeah, he
now,
forgot that this
now
was
we'll
tied
move
in.
forward a year.
We're working
so
on
they
this.
thought, okay, to avoid that problem, we're going to dig a ditch again, but we're going to put pipe in the ditch, big tubes, right? What they hadn't considered was the fact that, and I remember, Michelle, I don't know if you remember this, but that big dirt arena is actually almost even with sea level. You know, the beach is actually higher, and then they dug it out. So when they dug this ditch, it was actually below sea level, and we're right there on the beach.
Okay,
so all the water is like percolating through the ground to fill the pipes.
Yeah, okay. So I was talking to somebody today. Michelle, back me up on this. I was saying, we were talking about something that happened that was just ridiculous and so profoundly stupid. And I don't like the word. It's such a pejorative word. Ignorant, that's a different word.
Right.
You know, and that stupid implies the inability to learn.
Right.
But man, we run into stupid on some regular, and what you just described was tremendous stupid. And the friend we're talking about today was that stupid should be painful. It's the only way I think we can stop stupid, is that we just need to make it painful somehow. I've got to figure this out. I think it's an invention I'm going to start working on. All right.
Hammering some spikes into AC cable. It sounds like it could be painful at the wrong time.
You would think, right? You would think that would be a payment right then and there. Somehow that was avoided. Maybe I don't even know how to figure that out. All right, let's jump around here. I noticed you work with Elvis Costello. You know, Elvis is a special cat. This is a very special guy. I remember in '81 getting into his album, This Year's Model. You know, it's just so ahead of its time. What was it like working for the great Elvis Costello?
Oh, he's lovely. He's pretty incredible. And it was Elvis Costello and the Imposters. So,
Oh, dude.
and just an amazing band.
Yeah.
In the last year, last fall, we went out and Charlie Sexton was in the band as well.
Yeah,
so it
sure.
was just incredible. But talk about like a guy who, you know, an enormous catalog of music, over 500 songs, possibly every genre there is.
That's right.
And every night was kind of like a potluck. You know, he would make a set list, and after the third song, it would just go out the window. And
Dissolve,
yeah, he'd go off the audience. Like if he had them in his palm of his hand, he'd go really deep. If they weren't paying attention, he'd start rocking. It was just kind of, he could read the audience really well.
Yeah.
But you just never knew what was coming. You know, it was always just kind of like, all right, what's next? So flying by the seat of your pants, but just, you know, incredible songwriter and talent. And it was a blast. Like they were just great guys. A lot of fun.
Keep you on your toes. I mean, it's a technical challenge as an engineer
it's
because
a hard show to mix because you were
working the whole time, I imagine.
Yeah, like when I started, we had 80 inputs because we had, you know, Keyboard World was just 20 some inputs of different keyboards. You know, concert grand piano that was acoustic and MIDI, Wurlitzer, all this, you know, enormous amount of keyboard stuff. And the keyboard player would never send me the same samples down the same line. So like he just was kind of like a mad scientist. So you never knew what was going to come from where. So I was chasing him all night. And then Elvis had 3 different amps, a bunch of pedals, a couple acoustics. So you never knew what he was going to grab. And so the rhythm section, thank God, were locked in. I just turned them on and they mixed themselves. And we had a couple backup singers who were you know, spot on. But Elvis and the keyboard player, I just would chase all night long, like what's coming next? Where is it coming from? You know, because it was just, there was no framework. It was just kind of like watch and go, you know.
He's a genius. I mean, I don't know how to explain Elvis Costello. He's such a unique cat. You know, I from his early days, just such ahead of his time, just so ahead of his time. And the stuff he did with Nick Lowe. But I think one of the most interesting moments I ever had with him was with Waylon Jennings, doing the Psycho Don't You Mom.
Really?
Him and Waylon Jennings doing a duet. It was crazy. It was so neat. And I didn't know how to take it at the time. You know, I was a little punk rocker.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And they're catching Elvis Costello, and Waylon Jennings comes out, and they're like, it was a thing, man. Just such mad respect. So I'm very envious that you've had that job. You are the owner and creator of MixingMusicLive.com. Tell us about that.
So yeah, in 2019, I launched MixingMusicLive.com, and it houses 2 online video courses that I created. One, Mixing Music Live, which is a basic introductory course to live sound and mixing, and the other course is called Listen, and it teaches EQ. It kind of came about because over the years, meeting so many people who are getting started in audio and students who are learning audio, and just in, you know, with technology constantly changing so fast, the common thing I found was people are just overwhelmed. Like, how do I learn all these different consoles? How do I learn all this different gear? And I found that what they're missing is the fundamentals, you know, signal flow, gain structure, that kind of stuff. And so I created Mixing Music Live to kind of drill home that stuff, because once you understand the fundamentals, it makes learning the gear easier, you know? Signal flow is signal flow through a console. It's like, you know, so many people, they learn one desk and that's all they ever want to use. And I've heard stories of, you know, bands that are doing national, you know, headline tours with the front of house guy using an LS9 because that's the only thing he knows.
Are you serious? I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to name the band. I had somebody who was asking me when they were looking at my Pro X, like, "Oh, did you ever use an LS9?" I'm like, "No." Not for anything. I said, "Oh, well, you know, this band is using it." I'm like, "That's because the front of house guy doesn't know any other desk, and that's a shame."
Yeah, it's kind of sad, frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. So So like basically, it's just the fundamentals. You know, how to choose a microphone, mic placement, how to use EQ, dynamics, that kind of thing. And then Listen, I created when we all went home in 2020 and had nothing to do. I created the second course, which is Listen, because a lot of the students, what I found is there's even like students coming out of Full Sail in Berkeley and everywhere, they don't know how to use EQ. You know, like I find that they all tell me that, well, you know, EQ and hearing frequencies are my two biggest struggles because I know what EQ is, but I really don't know what to do with it. So that's why I created Listen, which teaches how. And I remember back when I started, like, yeah, I knew what EQ was, but I didn't know what the hell things were supposed to sound like and what you were supposed to do with it. So I created that to kind of condense and teach a 3-step method to learning EQ.
Well, that is very, very cool of you. So I would say any of our young up-and-comers coming, or some of the old dogs that want to take a different angle on it and get some updated ideas on the subject, reach out to mixingmusiclive.com. No, it sounds like a very worthy endeavor. Is this a for free thing? Is this just something you charge for?
I have a couple ebooks for free, and there's a blog. There's a lot of free resources on the site, but the 2 courses are paid.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Pooch is doing a cool thing like that. Very nice. Very nice. Again, you have such an extensive history with some really fabulous bands. We'll never have time to go through it all. So do you mind if I go around the ones that I really love?
Sure.
Fuel, my phone ringer. This just, kismet. When I'm the love of my life, and I am madly in love with my wife, calls me, it falls on me. When her ringtone is falls on, the song Falls on Me from Fuel. They're just a very specific band with a very specific sound. I always thought their guitars and the drums were very special in the way they were recorded. What was your experience with Fuel? I believe in 2003 that was more or less the original lineup. How was mixing drums for them?
He was a great drummer. Kevin was an amazing drummer. They were a blast to mix. I actually was when I mixed Fuel, I was filling in for Randy Lane, who had been with them for years, and Randy was off doing something else and asked me to fill in and do a tour. So it was I can't remember how long it was, but yeah, they're great guys, great music.
Very talented.
And a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, right around this, I think maybe a little before, but Shimmer came out, and that was very they really kind of hit the ground running. Did you see they just had that recent lineup change?
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, it's they did that Journey thing, the Foreigner thing. They got a singer that basically, if you close your eyes, kind of sounds like the original singer, but this guy plays guitar. So it's a very interesting thing for me. But it's so hard for me to change lanes, it's to see them as that opposed to the thing that I fell in love with. So, but it must have been a lot of fun working with them.
Yeah.
In their formative time. I noticed we've done a lot of work with this artist, extremely talented, and really somebody I came up when we thought of her as one of the guys. I mean, she really did hang out with us, and we toured around with Sublime, and they'd be the opening act, and it was No Doubt days. It's the great Gwen Stefani. What was it like working with Gwen?
Gwen's amazing. I did her first 2 solo tours in 2005 and 2007, and it was incredible. Like I've never seen anyone work as hard as that woman.
Yeah, right. She's
and
crazy.
Never complain. She's
a little bit of a warrior, a little soldier kind of in her. I don't know what that is, but yeah, she just keeps going. She's like the little bunny, the ever-ready bunny. She's incredible.
Yeah, and just such an incredible performer and a joy to be around. And she's like, the girl next door you can hang out with. There's no diva there at all. And she's one of the, at the time it was one of the biggest pop stars on the planet. And just a wonderful person and a blast. The tour was a lot of fun. I mean, she had an amazing band. And we had we were great crew. So we had a lot of fun every day on that.
Was this during the time when she had the Harajuku Girls with her and that whole thing? The
first tour was Harajuku Lovers, and she had the 4 Harajuku Girls.
What a kick. That was so weird. I mean, in a good way, but it was such this, it's this weird transplanted Japanese kind of fetish thing. I don't even know how to describe it, fad, but really cool. I mean, I remember very distinctively when they came to town and we were throwing up Stacks and Racks. I bet you were there. It was Shoreline. and they came through, and we didn't know what to make of that. It was such a departure from the No Doubt that we knew in her and her little, again, we always thought of her as she would come out and sing with Sublime with us and, and do her thing. And we really always thought of her as kind of one of the guys. I mean, it's just the way she rolled. And she's a tough chick, too. She's kind of a special girl. But what an immense talent and an incredible professional, just keeps bringing it. When I see her development, that's always, again, coming from the side where, again, we really, when I said it, I'm not using superb, I mean this. We really thought of her as one of the dudes. Like she just was, she hung with us like a little punk chick, like she was just one of us. And we never thought of her in a different way. Her and Tony were a team, and they were together, and that was just what it was. And she was just one of us. And to watch her kind of this blossom, this thing, this arch, this curve that she's went through to where you see her now on the TV with the I guess it's what is it, the Voice or whatever those shows
something like that.
Which it's just an incredible transition. I have to ask you a question. I hope you're not uncomfortable with this, but this is a really male heavy industry. There's a lot of dudes in the game. And some of us, she hadn't noticed. This is news to I thought you might understand this subject. And we've had a couple of other extremely talented females on the show. And I don't think this is a job that's specific, that matters if you're a boy or a girl. It just happens to be there's a lot of, frankly, white males in the game. Has this been any kind of a challenge to you, or is there anything that we should be doing as like dudes in the game where we can make it a more inviting environment? We really do try to encourage that in the game. We want anybody who's qualified to come in and do the thing, especially in a position like I have, or my brother, or the owner of our business. We're constantly looking for qualified, talented people. And scientifically, we are aware of the fact that females, frankly, have better hearing. They have better processing, and in my experiences, they're just easier to supervise and to be in the proximity with. What is your experience as a female in the industry?
Yeah, so it's funny because like when I started out, there were so few women. It was like the late '80s when I started working in live sound, and it was a passion for me. So it was kind of like I grew up with a lot of. Like I grew up in a neighborhood which was predominantly boys. Like my friends were all boys. I had a lot of male cousins, so I was comfortable around guys. So it didn't faze me much, but it never was really an issue. I mean, I'm sure there was over the years plenty of sexist comments and whatever, but it was never an issue or something that was going to prevent me from doing my job or getting to where I wanted to go. But unfortunately, I've found in the last 10 years, it's become a bigger problem, like the sexism and the sexual harassment, which I never experienced. I don't know if I was just lucky or if it was just the way I handled myself. But when I talk to young women these days, it seems to be way more rampant. And I don't know if it's because there are more women these days, so there's more of a chance of things like that happening. But and it's also a little different time. Like when I started, you kind of expected it. You just figured, well, you're going to do it. So you had a tough skin. You had to learn how to let stuff roll off your back, where I think young women these days don't expect it. They expect to just be welcomed into the industry. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. And when they're hit with it, they just don't have the tools to deal with it. They really don't know what to do. It just kind of blindsides them. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is I know there's a lot of men who really do support women and minorities being in the industry, making it more less of a white guys boys club. Like people who just want it to be more diverse and are always asking like, what can I do to help? And I think the biggest thing is hire people who are women, people of color, gay, trans, whatever. Just seek out when you're looking for people to fill positions, make it a point to not just choose from the usual suspects. Try and make it more of a diverse group of people that you're choosing from. And also when you are working with people, and this goes for anything, I think mental health has been a big topic over the last several years. And you know how it is when you get out on a gig and you got your head down, you're doing your job because you've got to get done by showtime. We tend to just live in our own little bubble. And I think a lot of times we kind of miss what's happening around us with other people on our crew. And a lot of times they can be dealing with stuff, whether it's someone is in a very uncomfortable situation or someone's dealing with mental health. And it takes us all to just kind of take a step back and just, look at your coworkers and your colleagues and make sure everybody's okay, just kind of check in. And what I like to tell men a lot of times is when you're in a situation and you see a woman who's something is said that's making her uncomfortable, or she's in an awkward situation where you can tell she's uncomfortable, speak up, have her back. Because a lot of times, you might get one guy who just wants to be that guy, and you can see the woman's uncomfortable, but everybody else is afraid to say anything. And all it takes is one person to stand up and say, hey, dude, I think you need to, just pull it a little bit, whatever. That helps. It's just more people needing to reach out and have each other's backs and say, hey, if you need someone to support you or someone to step in, I'm here. Just be aware of what's happening and look out for, situations when people that you're working with are in something might not be right, whether it's a mental health issue or an awkward situation that's happening that you not sure what, but they might need some help. And we all just need to have each other's backs a little bit more, I think. I
couldn't agree with you more. I think what happens is, especially from the older school, you mentioned that there was some anticipation. There was not, maybe that's not the right word. There was, you knew when we came up in our time, a ways back, there was a slightly different, it wouldn't have been out of nowhere for you to have somebody be kind of sexist or offensive one way or another. And you had certain tools in your toolbox to deal with that. As time has marched on, and now we're in the change of the millennia. Now we're 2 decades into that. I think that some of us older guys sometimes forget that we've moved forward in that time, and that people aren't the same. That there's more of a sensitivity, there's more of an awareness, there's more of a bunch of stuff. Rules have changed. There was I remember early in the punk rock days, homophobia was a very normal thing. Anti-Semitism. There was a bunch of bad behavior that was going on, and through time and through process, we learned that was not cool, and that we were being stupid and short-sighted and ignorant, and many other words that would descriptively say we were not at our best. And evolution took place. There was an evolution, and I know that sometimes I noticed that's between some of the older heads and some of the younger people, that sometimes that can be, it comes off kind of insensitive or unaware, but sometimes you're just being an old school roadie and it can get very tricky. So I think there's a little language barrier there, for the lack of a better way of putting it, and maybe a little bit of a time warp where it helps, I think what you said is to kind of keep an eye out. You got to get your sensitivity levels up a little bit, but some of the older heads, and I would say I'm one of them, that sometimes struggle with that and have to kind of march into the time that we live in now and be aware of that time and the special conditions that we live in, pertaining to, like you said, gays, straights, trans, whites, blacks, females, all the way down the line. That it's just a different time, and how you deal with each other is also different and called for to be different. I think there's anything to that.
And it's kind of like both sides. Because I get young women who'll say, they get all bent out of shape when they walk into a venue and someone assumes that they're the production assistant when they're the sound tech, or they assume that they're wardrobe because they're a girl. And I mean, that happens to me all the time. Like I walk in like, oh, wardrobe's down the hall or production office is down there. I'm like, oh, I'm the front of house engineer. And I never get told, well, you're not going to be the front of house engineer in my venue. They just say, oh, cool. You can't, if you're going to get that bent out of shape about something like that, like you got to give people the benefit of the doubt. When something is blatantly derogatory or sexist, or, someone's trying to be offensive. But when sometimes people just say stupid stuff, or they've never encountered a woman doing this job. So, hey, congratulations, you're the first one they've seen. Now, maybe the next one who walks through the door, they won't assume that they are wardrobe. But you kind of it has to come on both sides. Like, you have to learn how to let shit roll off your back and to not take everything personally, because sometimes it's just not a personal attack. It's just someone wasn't thinking. And like you said, the old school roadies. I mean, I grew up and came up in that era where we all gave each other tons and tons of shit. That's what you did,
That's
so it is a hard habit to break. when you have a bunch of people who are used to that, and you have a bunch of younger people who are a lot more sensitive,
Yeah.
and it's just open a conversation, open a dialogue between the two. It's not always as offensive as it appears to be.
Yeah.
But as soon as you put up that boundary and get all offended, now there's no conversation happening, and it's just you against them. And but there. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's you look at intention and motive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is the intention? What is the motive behind the person that might be coming incorrect? But it's more generational than it is meant to be incorrect or offensive or hurtful. But again, I think this is a dialogue and it has to be said. And I think we're in this weird transitional time, and things are sorting themselves out right now and who's what. So it's something for all of us, especially as older heads, to be aware of and be mindful of and slow our roll a little bit. And maybe, I'm definitely from the thrash on your Brody brother thing. We just beat up on each other for fun, and in a good way, in a loving way. But we're roadies, man. We're a little harder and a little crispy around the edges. It's a thing. I know you've worked with some amazing people: Janet Jackson, Fastball. I mean, lots of really Adam Lambert, extraordinarily talented guy, Melissa Etheridge, a bunch of incredible people. Kesha, what is the criteria you use to pick your jobs? I mean, you really seem like you've wove a thread through some really great experiences.
I don't know that there's criteria, but I definitely do, though. When I have a choice, I choose to mix music that I enjoy over something just because it's the biggest, hottest thing out there. I grew up on 80s rock and metal, and that was why I got into this business. That's what I wanted to mix. And for the longest time, the Spin Doctors were like a funk pop band, and they were great. Then I mixed Indigo Girls for almost 10 years, and I got kind of pigeonholed into, I did Joan Osborne, Jewel. I got pigeonholed into the chick that mixed chicks with guitars, and all I wanted to do was mix, rock and metal. So I really had to fight to get out of that, that genre of pop singers and girls with guitars, because everybody just thought of me for that type of gig. But when it was a rock band, it never even occurred to them.
Yeah.
So it was a struggle. It was just constantly telling people like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. And luckily, starting to get those gigs over the years. And it was just, Mr. Big came about, same Randy Lane again.
Right.
He was mixing, I think, Dream Theater at the time for years. And I was mixing all, Gwen and all this pop stuff. And he used to complain to me. He's like, I just want to mix acoustic guitars. I'm like, I just want to mix electric guitars. And, the Mr. Big Gig came up, and he immediately called me because he was offered it and couldn't do it. And I was just like, oh my God, they were one of my favorite bands. I mean, the talent in that band.
Yeah.
And, so it worked out, and I worked for them for like 10 years, and it was probably one of my favorite gigs ever, just incredibly talented guys, and the music that I love,
Right. No, I know those are sweet moments when you can land in the spot that is the thing you feel like is your thing, and it also lines up with your taste. It's such a rare, but it can happen. I noticed in 2015 you were inducted into the Full Sail Hall of Fame. Congratulations. How'd that feel?
Terrifying.
Oh, tell me why.
Well, because the whole reason I do what I do is because I didn't want to be on stage. I didn't want to be in front of people. I wanted to be behind the scenes, and that came about. I didn't even know it existed, and the school contacted me, and they sent me this letter and had me on a conference call, like, congratulations. And I was just like, do I have to accept this? I don't want to have to get up and give it. Like, you literally had to go down there, this big production, walk a red carpet, get up on stage, give a speech. It was the most terrifying thing you could think of for somebody who doesn't want to be on stage.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it's a wonderful family to be included in. I mean, just so many incredibly talented people from all genres of the entertainment industry. And it's just, it's a bunch of brothers and sisters that I never knew I had that are really wonderful people. So.
Well, it's quite an accomplishment. I've often wondered about. There's a little bit of an uneven, and maybe we could talk about this for a second. A little bit of an uneven acceptance. I'm not sure what the right words are here. It's Full Sail has been maligned, and on the other end of that, highly sought after and name checked for their accomplishments. And I can't, because I have dealt with folks from kind of both sides of that. in working with folks that have come from there. So I've seen folks that didn't seem to get very much from Full Sail and then not be able to show us very much. And then I've seen some other folks come from Full Sail that were extraordinarily talented. Is this the person or the place? What do you think's going on?
It's the person for sure. Like I've spent a lot of time there over the last probably almost a decade now, just going back and talking to students and just with the school, with career development and different instructors. And even I went there in 1989 and there was people in my class who just thought, well, I'm at Full Sail, so I'm going to walk into the record plant when I graduate and start mixing, Eric Clapton's next record. And it's that whole entitlement of like, just because I graduated from Full Sail, I'm going to, people think they're going to go out and Taylor Swift's going to be calling them or Billie Eilish is going to be calling them, to make their next tour. So it's the people who work really hard and understand that. And the school does a really good job of saying, look, when you start out, you're going to start at the bottom because regardless that you came here, you're going to still start at the bottom where everybody starts because you don't know what you don't know. That's the biggest thing. And so it is definitely like I've had a variety of students that I've been mentoring over the years from there as well. And most of them have been, great. Like they eat it up, and they learn everything they can and they get out of there and they're doing really well. And then some of them it's just like, well, I just want to mix. It's like, well, you're going to have to start by pushing cases and working in the shop and loading trucks or else go find a baby local band that's going to hire you to mix. But you're not going to be going out in an arena tour mixing anytime soon when you've never mixed anything.
Yeah. Right.
So it's definitely the person.
Yeah, no, that seems to be the case. I once in a while on our pages we'll put up little cutesy memes and try to make fun of some of the aspects of our work, and it can be any aspect. And there's a couple memes that come out for Full Sail. And I have a dear friend, Mr. Bob Scoville, who's Rush and Def Leppard and kind of a heavy hitter in the game. And he informed me, as like I said, I will put up once in a while a little tongue-in-cheek things, and he reached out to me and said, "You're better than that, buddy. Don't do that." And I got spanked by Robert Scoville, which if you're going to get a spanking and get one from Robert Scoville, it really lands. I mean, that's when Bob talks, I tend to listen, and so I've kind of changed because I have run into a few knuckleheads from that scene. Yeah. And somehow I think maybe initially got like a bad vibe about the larger scene and maybe misidentified the culprit, the problem there, and have in time come around to a different understanding.
Here's the thing you'll find is that the people who go to Full Sail who have who are going to succeed in the business are not going to be like, oh, I went to Full Sail. Yeah. It's the ones who just want to skate on through who are the knuckleheads that are just going to be, I went to Full Sail, give me a job, and yeah. So that's usually like the ones that went there that are successful you never even know about because it's just, that's where I got my education. It's not going to be, give me a job because I went to Full Sail.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I learned my lesson good on that one. And I think there's no pat truth to any of these things, SAE expressions, any of these guys. They all have good sides and different things they're offering. But I think your point was right, that they should understand when they come out, if you're going to come into a larger concern like this, we're going to want to know, great if you can push the knobs and fitters, but I need you to be able to fix the L21 when it drops, or you're having an L8 take a shit, excuse my language. I need you to be able to deal with that. So there's so much more to just, and that's sometimes a discussion that can be a little tricky, and some little jumped up 23-year-old comes in here fresh out of there and tells me they're an A1, and then when I stop laughing, and tell them that's great, they're probably not going to be touching any boards for 8 to 12 to 16 months. That's a little bit of a deflating moment for them. You co-founded soundgirls.org. Now tell us about, I know that was something early and you mentioned that you're not currently connected with them. What was the impetus to start it in the first place?
Yeah, so Sound Girls came about in 2012. Carrie Kais, the co-founder,
sure,
and I were on a panel at AES with a group of other women that were live sound engineers. And like I said, getting started in the 80s, there was very few women, but Carrie was the only other one that I had heard of. And we had known of each other for years. Carrie, monitor engineer for Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam. And even though our bands, like she was working for Pearl Jam and the Chili Peppers when I was doing Spin Doctors, and we were all kind of in the same circle, we just never crossed paths, but we knew of each other for years. We didn't meet till we actually did this conference. And when we did the panel, like all of us, had never met before, even though we'd all had over 20 years of experience in live sound. And we just bonded instantly. It was a great experience. And then, I was talking to Carrie like a month or so after, and she had mentioned how it was just so inspiring that all of us had stayed friends and been supportive of each other, and how cool would it have been if we had all known each other through our careers, like when we were getting started, to have that support. Sure. And at the same time, I'd been looking for a way to reach young women to tell them like, hey, you can do this. You don't have to be a guy to be a live sound engineer or to work in live sound. Yes. So we started talking, and Sound Girls was born.
It's I know it's a highly esteemed outfit. Right before the COVID, we were going to have a batch of the Sound Girls in for some training with Brad Maddox and Greg Price.
Huh? And
it was going to be, a big to-do. And then, of course, the breaks came, and everything had to stop for a minute. So we haven't rejoined that effort. But I think that would be quite interesting and really good thing to do. Yeah. It seems like a very supportive and cool place to be. And I know a few folks that are involved that can't say enough about it. And Carrie is obviously one of the top engineers in the world and an extremely talented person, as well as yourself. So good for you guys. Really quickly, we're kind of running up against you. We mentioned the Indigo Girls. You really spent a batch of time with those guys. I mean, what an impressive band. Those guys are too much. They really bring it. They're still going strong. They have a really, like, almost a cult following. Their people just love them to death.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Big, you said you had a lot of fun with it. You couldn't be more right. Mr. Big was one of the most talented bands out there. That had to be a lot of fun mixing those guys. Would you consider that your first big rock shows that you were doing? I mean, in the sense of rock and roll.
Well, I did. I mean, that kind. Before that, I had done Collective Soul, a little bit more like pop rock, but Mr. Big was probably the heaviest, I think. Yeah. And with them, when I started with them, it was in 2009 that they had reunited. They'd been broken up for like 12 years or something. And they reunited at the original lineup with Paul Gilbert it was to just do 3 weeks in Japan. Like we were going to Japan because the Japanese fans had never given up, they love that American.
Yeah.
They booked it was a 3-week tour. It sold out in like a day. And, it just, what was amazing, and they decided to do some more, so they just kept touring, and we kept Japan is like the Beatles are there. It was like they're huge in Japan, they're huge in Asia. In America they can't get arrested, like we're doing in America in 2011. Playing all these little tiny clubs that I managed to somehow avoid in the 90s, like the Harpo's and Rosa, but then we did all the major metal festivals in Europe, and so it was a blast.
They're an amazing band. I mean, as players, they kicked ass. There's no two ways about it. And Japan has they're kind of like that with, there's a few bands, they'll roll like that with. Iron Maiden's that way. Joe Jackson of all bands. Joe Jackson goes over there and just owns that scene, But you try to get, other than outside of New York or LA, most people couldn't tell you who the frig Joe Jackson is. One of the most talented guys in the game. But there's something about a deep appreciation that the Asian market, it's a very unique market, and it's a great place to go and get paid too. I mean, it's just the nature of that beast. Very, very, very unique.
Europe is like that too.
Well, it depends. Europe has got a more, in my opinion, they kind of go, at least in the last 20, 25 years, they're either a lot of hard rock, or let's just face it, Judas Priest metal type stuff. White Snake, Maiden, it goes on and on. Or kind of electronic music. They really go big that way. But
I mean,
I'm sure
blues too.
Yeah, and it's kind of, It's a very unique market, and of course, if you're big there, there's so much of it. You can just
Well, they support the arts really well there. More, I would say, more so than the United States. I think.
Well,
as
you
far
know,
as the arts.
older countries we're kind of. I always think of America as kind of like a toddler kicking and screaming. You know, we're just like this young country over here with a very mixed up views and
Right.
ever changing kind of face, and
Right.
it's just we're in the world of countries. We're kind of one of the newer guys, and
Oh,
and a little
absolutely.
obnoxious. You know, a little bit like that screaming kid in the store. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not always on our best behavior, let's just say. And when you're a 2,000-year-old world
Right.
like London or France or
Right.
Germany or Spain, they just have a different perspective because they have a different history, a different culture.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, what's your favorite thing to do? I know you've toured extensively. What's your favorite thing to do on a down day, on a dark day on touring? When it's your time?
Yeah, if it's like a cool city that I like, especially like in Europe, I love exploring. Like just whether there's museums or like just in Japan, it was great to just go and see all of the gardens and all the Japanese gardens and things like that.
Yeah.
So I love exploring the cities that I'm in. And if it's like somewhere like that I've been a bunch of times, sometimes I just like to hibernate, like work out, get some room service, and hibernate.
Yeah, I get that one. All right, so I'm going to ask you one more goofy, like, fanboy question. I got to, but I can't decide if it's between Luscious Jackson or General Public. I have equal fascination with both. I think General Public as a band I mean, literally, how many bands do you know can make a whole album and every song is good? That is a rare ability. General Public, for me, were able to do that. Luscious Jackson, extraordinarily talented girls. I mean, they really were a fun band to see. Hit song-wise, they had a couple, and I wasn't that deep into their catalog. I enjoyed them as a live act. General Public, I could put that album on right now or a couple of their albums and just let it play and work half the day on it. What was your experience with General Public? You see where I landed on that one.
Yeah, it was short and sweet, but it was incredible. It was Roger Wakeling and our David Wakeling and Roger Charlery, and they had a bunch of studio cats from musicians who were. It was an amazing band. We were doing a tour, and somewhere in a couple weeks into it, I remember David did an interview with like Billboard or something, or one of the magazines, where he was pissed at Sony, their record company.
Yeah.
And David, being very outspoken, just blabbed about it. And Sony immediately pulled the tour support, and that was it.
Wow.
One of the most, I mean, it was incredible to mix. They were so good. And great players and great people, but it was very short-lived. Unfortunately, it was about a month or two, and that was it. Tour support's gone. Tour's over.
It was a flash in the pan, but what a bright, brilliant flash! Right. You know what I mean? As a band goes, it's something I will still whip out. I'm largely a hard guitar rock and roll dude, but I'm also from the '80s, and I can appreciate some of those sounds. And General Public, you nailed it as players, as musicians, as creators. Oh my God! I mean, they had a formula that just worked. And some of their stuff is extraordinary. And then, of course, their singer, that very unique voice. It's kind of like the psychedelic version. There's some guys in the game that can really just really deliver a line, and they were extraordinary at it. You've done a lot of cool things. You've been around a bit. And you've already. I was going to ask you, advice for the youngsters coming up. You've already had so much good advice coming up so far in the interview. But is there one thing that we got a lot of young people coming into the game? You're probably aware of this, into the mix, and it's not exactly the game it used to be. COVID changed a lot of things. Right. Let's be honest. We've lost about 20% of our workforce to other things. Especially some of the young guys that had the IT experience and so on. They kind of just spread out into other directions. I think some people, they realize that the kind of nomad qualities of what we do is not as easy as they had anticipated or as exciting. Do you have any advice for youngsters coming up in the game of how they could do it and be successful?
I think the biggest thing is just, if you're trying to get started in live sound or audio, just take whatever gig you can that's related to it, even if it's not your dream gig. And, you're going to learn something from every job you have.
Absolutely.
Whether it's people skills, or tech skills, there's always something you can learn. So just take the job and learn how to network. We all know we get jobs by who we know, being in the right place at the right time and having connections. So, just work and build your network and, learn everything you can from every situation you're in.
Well, you're not wrong. Saying no as infrequently as possible to acquire more information and skills is absolutely critical. But I think the point you mentioned about networking, I don't think that's ever been more important. Now, we all know here that we've gotten many of our jobs from the jobs we've done before and the people and the connections we made before. But networking now is so critically important. It's so interesting and such a part of our business and how the forward momentum of what's going to come next for you is it's critically important. I really have to thank you, Michelle. First of all, it's lovely to be able to speak with you and for you to share your experiences with us. It's really fascinating. But also, we put you through a little bit of a ringer here with our technical difficulties. Your patience is so, thank you so much. It was absolutely lovely to have you on the show and a treat to get to speak with you. Yeah. Thank you for coming on this evening.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And happy birthday, Shadone.
That's very sweet. I better do that again at the end. He is my boss. That's very kind. Thank you so much. You take good care of yourself, and I hope we see you out on the road. And remember, Sound Image Productions is always here for you. Ever need us in any way, shape, or form, reach out.
Indeed.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Take
have a
good
good
care
one,
of yourself.
Michelle.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Winston, for bringing Michelle to us. And, I knew of her through the ether. I've been working on Carrie.
Right.
Carrie's been a little bit of a hard nut to crack. First of all, she's very busy.
Yeah, she is.
And when she was going to come on, she had gotten injured. This is middle of COVID. And she ended up having, I believe, some kind of minor surgery or something, and it delayed us. And then she went out with Eddie and on and on.
Right.
And so we haven't had her. But having Michelle was an absolute treat and lovely. And I think we need to reach out more and do better and being inclusive here on the show. And I think that's a myopic thing that I'm just trying to do better at. I appreciate you coming on this evening.
Thanks.
Next week we've got the great Daniel Keller-Liston on, who is Insights and Sound, is kind of a badass in his own right. He's got his own shows and his own thing. Just recently moved his studio to Tennessee.
Wow.
So we're looking forward to the greatness that is him and the things he's getting up to. He'll be on the show next week. We do this every week. Thursdays at 7, sometimes 7:15, sometimes.
Well, yeah.
But that seems to be a little bit more of a moving target than it has ever been. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of it and see if we can get the time closer to the 7 o'clock starting time that we had originally had done and was the norm. It just seems to be getting away from us.
That's the difference between live and not live. Right?
Yeah, it's a choice we make intentionally. We want to be live. We want the energy of live and the struggles that come from live and not cutting and airing. This show is live. We do it here for real.
Yeah.
We are at work right now. I've been here for the last 11 hours, and we do it because we love it. And we love that these wonderful people come and share their experiences with us and our audience. And my friends can come and we can do what we do. So thank you for being here, Winston. We'll see you next week with Daniel Liston. We hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you again next Thursday at 7 p.m. Until then, be good, be cool. You know what to do. Good night.